the 5th Fleet arrives around Iwo Jima, along with Task Force 56, which carried all the Marine elements that would be undertaking the invasion of Iwo Jima itself. On February 16th, the pre-invasion bombardment of Iwo Jima began, with U.S. Air Force B-29 superfortresses escorted by fighter aircraft bombarding the island for 2 days, dropping hundreds of tons of bombs on the island and trying to destroy as many Japanese defensive positions as possible. While the air bombardment of Iwo Jima was ongoing, the U.S. Naval Task Force was ready to start their own bombardment of Iwo Jima. 2 days from D-Day, February 17th, was the start of the U.S. Navy's bombardment of Iwo Jima. Multiple battleships, cruisers, and a myriad of destroyers and PT boats started bombarding the island with everything they could, doing their best to assist the Marines that would soon be landing on this hellish island. As the hour of D-Day approached, the U.S. Navy stopped their bombardment, but would be on station around the island to assist with naval bombardment as needed. There were around 20,000 soldiers of the Empire of Japan defending the island of Iwo Jima. The Japanese defenders were led by General Kuribayashi, a veteran of Japanese long war with China. To assist in the island's defense against the invasion they knew to be coming, the Japanese divided the island into several defensive zones, starting with Mount Suribachi in the southwest of the island. Mount Suribachi was the dominating feature on Iwo Jima. Being 554 feet tall or 169 meters, it commanded the island's environment, and whomever controlled the mount would control the island of Iwo Jima. The Japanese had dug a labyrinth of tunnels underneath Mount Suribachi, with multiple hidden machine gun nests, artillery positions, mortar positions. The mount itself would be a very formidable obstacle for the Americans to overcome. The next Japanese defensive sector surrounded the rock quarry. The rock quarry formed the cornerstone of the Japanese first defensive line that they had built across the island. The first defensive line was full of machine guns that had interlocking fields of fire, as well as pre-registered artillery positions and mortar positions. It, along with Mount Suribachi, would prove to be the Americans' first major obstacle to overcome. The next defensive sector was in the central lowlands part of Iwo Jima, and it was dominated by 4 hills that the Japanese had turned into near impregnable fortresses. They also built a second defensive line across the central part of the island. At the far end of the island, the Japanese built their final defensive line, and it was the location of the headquarters of General Kuribayashi's 109th Division on the island. For the upcoming Marine landing on the 19th of February, the Marines had selected 8 beaches. Starting from left to right, we have Green Beach, Red 1 and Red 2, Yellow 1 and Yellow 2, and finally Blue 1 and Blue 2. Each beach had several Marine battalions up to an entire Marine regiment planned on landing on their assigned beach on D-Day. On the morning of D-Day, the 19th of February 1945, the Marine 3rd, 4th, and 5th Divisions arrive offshore. Around 7 a.m., the Marines eat a hearty breakfast. Around 8:30 in the morning, they start boarding the 482 Amtraks that will take them to their assigned beaches. Right before H hour at 9 a.m., the 482 Amtraks are slowly making their way towards the beaches. From left to right, we have the 28th Marine Regiment landing on Green Beach, the 27th Regiment landing on Red 1 and Red 2, the 23rd landing on Yellow 1 and Yellow 2, and the 25th landing on Blue 1. All Marine regiments land around 9 a.m. in good order, and they are surprised to find extremely light Japanese resistance. The black volcanic sand that covers Iwo Jima's beaches is very soft, which makes it very difficult to move over the beaches. As the Marines moved further inland, the 23rd and 25th regiments encountered stiffer resistance as they climbed to higher elevations off the beach. Around 10 a.m., all hell broke loose. General Kuribayashi's plan came into effect. His defensive plan was for the American beachhead to fill up with American soldiers in the first hour or two of landing. And then once the beachhead was full of American soldiers, start to bombard the beach with everything the Japanese had, from pre-sighted artillery to pre-sighted mortars, tank shells, machine gun fire, all from hidden defensive positions that the Japanese had spent the last year plus building all over the island. The Marines were initially stunned at the ferocious Japanese bombardment, especially after the largely uneventful landings on the beaches. But they were able to quickly gather their bearings and start to fight back against the hidden Japanese defensive positions. By 11 a.m., all 4 Marine regiments had started to move off their respective beaches. The 28th Marine Regiment on the left flank was moving to cut off Mount Suribachi from the rest of the Japanese defenders. The 25th on the right flank was moving towards the quarry, and the 27th and 23rd Regiments in the center were moving towards Airfield No. 1. By 3 p.m., elements of the 24th Marine Regiment started to land on the beaches. The sights and sounds of that first day and night on Iwo Jima was labeled a nightmare in hell by Time Life correspondent Robert Sherrod. February 20th begins with the 28th Marine Regiment pushing up Mount Suribachi, overcoming Japanese defensive positions, pillboxes, minefields, booby traps, hidden machine gun nests. The Japanese were so well dug in on the volcano that the Marines fell back on a tried and true tactic during the Pacific War. Flamethrower teams of 2 to 3 men would move forward, destroy enemy defensive positions, which would allow the Marines behind to push forward. The 26th Marine Regiment landed on the island on the 21st of February, followed by the 4th and 5th Marine Division headquarters and their respective generals. Late in the day on February 21st, nearly 50 Japanese kamikaze aircraft attacked ships of the U.S. task forces anchored off Iwo Jima. The light carrier Lunga Point suffered minor damage. The fleet carrier Saratoga suffered heavy damage, enough to need it to return to Pearl Harbor for repairs, and the USS Bismarck Sea was sunk, losing 318 of her crew. On February 22nd, the 28th Marine Regiment continued to go up Mount Suribachi, fighting tooth and nail against the ragged Japanese defenders that were holding out to the last man. While this was occurring, on the 23rd of February, the headquarters of the 5th Marine Corps and the 3rd Marine Division landed on Iwo Jima, as well as Marine reinforcements in the 21st Marine Regiment, which took its place on the front line. Finally, late in the day on the 23rd of February, the 28th Regiment had scaled the volcano and planted the American flag proudly from the summit of the volcano, and it came to signify the struggle in the Pacific against an unrelenting enemy. Over the last several days, while the Marine 28th Regiment was conquering Mount Suribachi, the Marine 4th Division was moving up the right flank of Iwo Jima, and the Marine 5th Division was moving up the left flank. The Marine 4th Division on the right flank had the harder of the two fights, as they were overcoming tough Japanese resistance in and around the quarry. Over the last several days of fightings, the Marines also cleared Airfield No. 1 and had pushed up to Airfield No. 2. The Marine strategy was for the 3rd Marine Division to advance up the center towards Motoyama Village and Airfield No. 3, capturing both for the Americans, while the 5th and 4th Marine Divisions made flanking attacks. To assist in this sustained drive, the Marines had several battalions of tanks ready to assist them in their drive to Motoyama, and a large artillery and naval presence was prepared on the 25th of February to shock the Japanese so a breakthrough could be made. On the night of February 24th and the morning of February 25th, the 9th Marine Regiment arrives on the line. On the morning of February 25th, a massive naval and artillery bombardment of the 2nd Defensive Line begins. Japanese troops and soldiers in and around the 2nd Defensive Line are thrown into chaos, as hundreds and then thousands of artillery and naval shells hit their positions. The Marine soldiers hope that this massive bombardment will ease their way to a quick breakthrough. After the preparatory bombardment is over, the main advance into the Motoyama Plateau begins. The 21st and 9th Marine Regiments push onto Airfield No. 2, capturing major sections of it on the 25th and 26th of February. With Sherman tanks and Sherman flamethrower tanks leading the way, the 21st and 9th are able to capture most of Airfield No. 2 by the 28th of February. While the 3rd Marine Division is pushing up the center, the 5th Marine Division on the left flank is making good progress against the 145th Infantry Regiment. However, the 4th Marine Division on the right flank is running into serious difficulties. After capturing most of the quarry by the 27th of February, the 24th and 25th Marine Regiments are running into serious difficulties on that right flank. The regiments of the 4th Marine Division are running into this substantial obstacle called Hill 382, which the Japanese have turned into a near impregnable fortress. Around the village of Minami is what would be called Turkey Knob by the Marines. Also nearby is what would be called the Amphitheater. Both areas are depressed terrain where the Japanese can fire down on them from the surrounding hillsides. On the left flank, the Marines of the 5th Division are also having a hard time with Hill 362A, which is another Japanese strongpoint that will have to be overcome. After consolidating their positions around the airfield, the 21st and 9th Marine Regiments continue to push into the village of Motoyama. 24th and 25th Marine Regiments push into the amphitheater in the south. They continue to take severe losses. From their elevated positions in the south, the Japanese are able to fire down at the Marines with impunity, causing severe casualties among the 23rd, 24th, and 25th Marine Regiments. On March 2nd, the 24th Marine Regiment is able to summit Hill 382 and capture it from the Japanese after severe hand-to-hand fighting over the last several days. Similarly, the 27th and 26th Regiments are able to overrun Hill 362A in the north and capture the village of Nishi. Around the 5th of March, the 21st and 9th Regiments slow down around the obstacles of Hill 362B and Hill 362C. On March 5th, the 1st B-29 makes an emergency landing on Airfield Number 2. The B-29 makes a hard landing on Airfield Number 2, but the lives of its crew are saved, and makes the case from a strategic standpoint how important the capture of Iwo Jima and its airfields are overall. After the capture of Hill 382, the general strategy moving forward is for the 5th Marine Division to advance and capture the village of Kita in the north. The 3rd Marine Division will advance towards the sea and capture Hill 362C if possible. And the 4th Marine Division in the south will capture the remaining parts of the amphitheater and advance towards the sea as well. On the morning of the 7th of March, all the American plans are in place for their general offensive to the sea. By this stage in the battle, after nearly 2 weeks of very high-intensity combat, the Japanese garrison had been ground down to less than half of its original size. At dawn on March 7th, hundreds of American artillery pieces open up on the Japanese lines. The Marines by now, after over 2 weeks of heavy fighting, know that the Japanese are dug into their defensive positions like ticks, and they're going to have to go in with flamethrowers and flame tanks and burn them out. The Japanese position is getting more and more precarious, with General Kuribayashi's headquarters only several hundred yards from the frontline fighting. On the 7th of March, the Americans begin their push to the sea, with the 9th Regiment capturing Hill 362C and pushing the 2nd Japanese Brigade northwest. The Japanese are very much caught off guard by this major American push. In the south, in the 4th Marine Division sector, the 24th, 23rd, and 25th Marine Regiments finally push out of the amphitheater and close in on the village of Higashi. And in the north, in the 5th Marine sector, they finally capture Hill 362B, and the 27th, 28th, and 26th Marine Regiments keep pushing the Japanese back. On the 8th and 9th of March, the 9th, 21st, and 24th Regiments reaches the sea, cutting off the last major pockets of Japanese resistance. By the 11th of March, there was only several remaining Japanese pockets of soldiers on the island. In the south, the remnants of the Imperial Japanese Navy Regiment was holed up in the hills west of Takachawa Point. Southwest of Hill 362C, several hundred Japanese soldiers were holding out in what would come to be known as Cushman's Pocket. And in the northern parts of the island, the remnants of the 145th Japanese Regiment and the 2nd Japanese Brigade were holed up along with the headquarters of General Kuribayashi's 109th Division. All in all, by this stage of the battle, there was between 6,000 and 7,000 Japanese soldiers left on the island against more than 70,000 Americans. On the 11th of March, the Americans started the final assault on the Japanese remnants. The 25th and 23rd Marine Regiments in the south pushed into the Imperial Japanese Navy remnants, and by March 15th had completely eliminated the pocket in the south. While the southern pocket was being eliminated, the 9th and 24th Marine Regiments were pushing against Cushman's pocket, eliminating it by March 16th. Finally, in the north, we have the assault by the 21st, 26th, 27th, and 28th Marine Regiments on the remnants of the Japanese. The Japanese 2nd Brigade and the 145th Japanese Regiment are almost entirely wiped out by the 16th of March. And General Kurabayashi is leading the last stand around the gorge with less than 500 soldiers. On March 16th, Iwo Jima was declared secure, with the final remaining resistance coming from the western half of Kitano Point and in the gorge to its southwest. The 500 remaining Japanese would hold out for roughly 9 more days, in which they were steadily reduced to a space by March 24th of no more than 50 by 50 yards. On the 19th of March, a last radio transmission was sent out from the Japanese defenders on Iwo Jima. All officers and men of nearby Chichijima, goodbye. General Kurabayashi himself died between the 19th and 24th of March, and by the 24th, the Japanese were rebuffing all Marine attempts to get them to surrender, and on the 25th of March, the last remaining Japanese positions were destroyed, and about 60 Japanese were finally persuaded to surrender. Iwo Jima had been the bloodiest battle of the Pacific War so far. In the days that followed the destruction of the Japanese forces on the island, the Americans started to count their dead. Now we're going to focus on the toll that the battle took on both sides. We're going to start with killed in action and wounded in action by each Marine division. Here are the losses fighting over this tiny 5x8 island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The 3rd Marine Division suffered 1,855 dead and 3,705 wounded. The 4th Division suffered the heaviest casualties of any Marine division with 2,580 dead and 4,833 wounded. The 5th Marine Division took 1,601 dead and 3,648 wounded, the lightest toll by any of the 3 divisions involved in the assault, but still extremely heavy by US standards. Now we're moving to the losses with killed in action and wounded in action for the 2 branches of the U.S. Armed Forces that were involved in the battle, the Marines and the Navy. The 3 Marine divisions lost a total of 6,036 men killed and 12,186 men wounded. The Navy, due to mostly kamikaze attacks and artillery attacks on their ships throughout the battle, lost 835 men killed and 7,031 men wounded. Now we're going to transition to the total losses by the U.S. forces in the Battle of Iwo Jima. Total combined losses across all branches of the U.S. Armed Forces for the Battle of Iwo Jima was 6,871 killed in action, 19,217 wounded in action for a total of 26,088 total casualties. Now moving on to the nearly 21,000 Japanese garrison and their losses in the battle. The Japanese had 20,800 men killed in action in the battle, and less than 200 prisoners of war or wounded in action. The Japanese preferred to fight for their emperor to the death, and they definitely paid for it in this battle, losing nearly 21,000 men killed